In every corner of America, there are stories of resilience, innovation, and the unwavering spirit of community. Stories of people and places transformed by the power of connection, collaboration, and a shared vision for a better future. This is the Community Effect, brought to you by NeighborWorks America.
Welcome to the Community Effect, the NeighborWorks America podcast. I'm your host, Marietta Rodriguez. When disaster strikes, the recovery doesn't end when the cameras leave. It takes commitment, trust, and time to rebuild both homes and hope. Across the country, NeighborWorks network organizations stand with their communities through every stage of recovery, from immediate relief to long-term rebuilding. In today's episode, After the Storms, Resilience and Rebuilding in Los Angeles, we explore how our network partners on the ground make recovery real. Joining me today is Lori Gay, President and CEO of the NHS of LA County, one of our longest-standing NeighborWorks organizations. Lori, I'm really excited to welcome you to the Community Effect.
Thanks for having me, Marietta. Glad to be here.
So, Lori, Los Angeles has faced wildfires recently, floods. They were hard hit during the foreclosure crisis. So there have been economic shocks over the years. When disaster happens, what is the work and how does the NHS of LA County, what does your team do immediately?
We are first and foremost first responders. So we immediately do financial counseling, outreach in the community saying, talk to us, let's talk about your money. Usually if there's a physical related disaster, we're doing free property inspections and assessments so that if there are insurance claims that need to be filed, families have a better sense of their problem, the scope of work. It protects them from predators because we're the persons talking to them first and saying to them, don't sign anything, hold on, consumer beware. Let us help you. We're a trusted advisor. Communication is what we're putting out. And then really turning that in the world of a community developer into client intake so that we know how to best respond and to morph and adapt very quickly to respond as soon as any kind of disaster happens.
I think that kind of flexibility and that immediate response is a real strength and a muscle that your team has built over the years, unfortunately, out of necessity. I want to check in on a story that I often tell, and you can keep me honest whether or not I'm telling it appropriately or accurately. One of the things that I remember hearing shortly after the Pasadena and Altadena fires that impacted your area so horribly was that you received a call from the NeighborWorks organization in Hawaii saying, let us help you. We provided a lot of assistance during the Maui fires. We can help you with forms and processes that we've already refined. Let us just package all of this up and send it to you, and it can give you a jump start in that emergency response. Is that accurate?
Almost.
Okay.
You're like 98% there. My first series of calls was with Lisa and Donna Wright, your team members. We talk every week. It's been remarkable. They said, we have a number of affiliates. Let's see if we can connect you with the most recent. When they gave information to me, they were also reminding them, Lori needs you. And that network family component from Chico, where the Paradise fires were 20 minutes away, going south, west, all the way to Hawaii, all the way back east, all the way to the south. I just heard from a number of people, but Hawaii and Chico were really the two that were the most aggressive. Las Vegas, very aggressive in getting to us. You know what the power of that is like. All I could do was cry, right? Because the helplessness you feel, even when you know what to do, you need the reinforcement. And that's what the network provides. Hawaii sent the most documentation. They sent everything from digital ads to curricula. And Chico sent names and contacts It's just one thing after another like that from friends within the Pacific District, as we call it, of NeighborWorks, I think was remarkable. And these were fire survivors. And that's what we needed the most help with.
I think it's a powerful statement about the network. Naturally, you could have those relationships, but the network came together and really supported you because it can be incredibly overwhelming. And I'm often asked, why NeighborWorks? You have a great group of 250 network organizations. We love them all, but we could just fund them directly. What's the purpose of you as an intermediary, or what value do you bring? That's a powerful story of the network being together and helping each other out in this time of crisis. And just what I'm hearing as you're describing that is they were saying, look, here's a hand, here's some tools, but we will help you get to the other side because we've done it and we know it is possible.
Right.
It seems impossible, but we are here to support you.
Right. And you need that at the darkest moments. It's your extended family, right? And in the case of the technical side, there's nothing like it because you can cut and paste, use what you need. I've always said pulling things off the shelf is one of the best network tools we have. And then each of them sent money. And I am a giver. I come from a family of faith. My husband has to stop me because I'd give everything away. That was beautiful as well. People just in the network sending money, but those specific groups I mentioned, same thing from their organizations. And I think we hadn't thought about doing that until 9/11. It was the first time our board voted to try to be helpful with every disaster in our network from that period forward. That 24 years of giving, we needed it this time. And we were so grateful because every dollar matters to help families in crisis. And when they've lost everything, sometimes cash is just king. Being able to pass through millions of dollars now that we've spent to help families over this last 9 months has been a remarkable gift to us as well.
That's incredible. How do you, in the light of a disaster of devastation at that level, balance as an organization responding to urgent needs like shelter and emergency supplies versus the longer process of rebuilding and restoring community stability? How do you balance all of those needs?
We're pretty strategic about that as well. It's been very different with this disaster, though, because we're not accustomed to having philanthropy as a large player in our space. They've always been there with some percentage of our portfolio or gift giving and receiving. But it's a much larger space this time around, with philanthropy leading the charge on the grants and contributions side. We have really dealt with the urgent needs, as we mentioned, the financial counseling, the property assessment piece, and then being asked to be in the interim space, which we aren't always there. It just depends what the disaster type is. But in this case, giving away a lot of rental assistance grants because families are stuck. And if the normal government funding is slowed, who's helping tide people over if their insurance claims are slow or low? So in this disaster, the unfortunate truth is, like most things, people are underinsured. And we're in a high cost state, so that's not abnormal. But the uninsured numbers, there's been a lot of fights about what it is, so we only speak to our client base, right? And what we're hearing on the street is we served at all of the disaster centers, all of the one-stops. We were there. And so I think that 40% is the number that we've been facing of uninsured. I've never seen the number that high. If I'm wrong and it's half that, it's still more than we know. And so I think we couldn't have projected for that. There's a gap. And we're saying out here that the gap is about $250,000, no matter what space it seems people are in. And if they're going to rebuild to the long-term space, if they make their way back, then they have to think about building smaller they have to think about other resources they can access because that's not a small gap. In many cities, the rebuild is 600 to 800,000 on average in Altadena, double that in the Palisades. How do you do it? This is just way too much money for the everyday person. And so I think we're fundraising to that. We're raising capital to that, low cost capital to that. The federal government resources were a little slower this time in terms of approvals. It's FEMA, it's OES. A lot of cases are still in appeal or pending. So people are stuck. They've moved 10, 12 times. So how do we help with that? We've granted several $1 million in the last 2 months. As we look ahead, we're saying part of your interim strategy may need to be an ADU on your parcel, an RV, that you've rented. How can we help with that? We've raised capital for that space too. That's highly unusual to have that kind of demand. As we look long term, it's who pays for it. Can we get families to right size their properties to what they can afford? And with that high uninsured number, remember, California has been depopulating its insurance base for some time. The California Fair Plan was always meant to be a high risk plan. It might provide $100,000 to $150,000 for an $800,000 rebuild. We're short. So we need help from everyone. It is always bad to think government needs to do everything for anybody. It wasn't set up for that. So we're saying to people, who pays for it? How do we, with a pretty rich town, right? We've got billionaires here by the dozens. So we have no problem saying to private philanthropy, you need to help. Let's all dig in. Let's figure out the financing mechanisms. Conventional mainstreams need to do their job. And this is primarily a middle class rebuild. That's also very disconcerting for a lot of people who are focused on the most vulnerable as their primary giving strategy. So I think we've got to upend some things. Every family matters. And we're saying, don't forget the homeless, but the poor we will always have with us. So how do we balance this time? Also helping the middle class. And I think that that's a very hard community development conversation, but we're having it because we want our communities back stronger than before, more resilient. We'll have from rich to poor in the fire zones. We want to make sure that people are cared for adequately as they rebuild.
So what I'm hearing is there's a piece for everyone to jump in here. One of the things I really appreciate about you, Lori, is your ability to tell the story of the individual. I'm going to ask you now if you wouldn't mind sharing a story of a family or neighborhood that you've helped recover and rebuild after a crisis. Something that will illustrate to our listeners that, what does that recovery look like? It may not look like their lives or their before the crisis, but what it looks like now and how your organization helped facilitate that.
Great. Thanks. I was just on Saturday, I was telling one of your team members about us participating in now for the past 20 years, the largest street fair in California, the Taste of Soul in one of our target neighborhoods. We had our whole team out. And one of the people that came to visit at the booth we held, the housing pavilion we host, her name is Miranda. And Miranda is someone we met in 1991, 92, right in there. The economic unrest hit, the Rodney King riots, whatever people want to remember it as. And she wanted to be a homeowner. And there was all this unrest, all this devastation. And in the middle of that, we signed on with the Hope 3 initiative. I don't know if you remember that, Marietta.
Sure, I
Both
do.
of us. We became one of the recipients with our public housing authority to be able to rebuild 38 homes, purchase, rehab, sale. We utilized that time period, 1992 and beyond, to help people like Miranda. And she was coming out of public housing and wanted to be a homeowner. She was helping in the classroom back then. She had 4 daughters, and we helped her buy a home in South LA using the grant resources from that federal program, coupled with local resources, local down payment assistance and our usual kind of capital stack to help people buy a home. Fast forward all these years later, last year she came to our Legacy Summit. During our 40th year of service, we're holding all these legacy summits centered around estate planning and building intergenerational wealth. And there was Miranda in the audience, and all we could do is just cry and hold each other because that's decades ago. She still owns the home. She became a school principal over time. All of her daughters going to school, graduating college, starting their own families. Out of those ashes in 1992, she looked at it and said, let me step up and step in and step over the threshold of opportunity, not get stuck, not stay in public housing, but please help me be a homeowner. We were so excited to share with Miranda. She was one of 9,200 families in public housing at the time who made the choice toward homeownership instead of staying in a space that she felt she could get up out and get moving forward. Now she's retiring from being a school principal. She brought all her granddaughters by on Saturday. All tears of joy and celebration. The resilience that her family had now is impacting generations. She's finishing her estate plan. This is what matters. And she now will pass that wealth that only homeownership can provide down for generations to come.
An incredibly powerful story of Miranda and her family. Thank you for sharing it. It just shows how important this work is and how it changes people's lives and the trajectory of their lives for generations. Right. It's incredible. Yeah. I want to ask you one last question about rebuilding and recovery. What would you identify as the hardest part about maintaining momentum on recovery? I think right after disaster, people are very motivated. They see it on the news. But as months go by, sometimes we lose the headline of it. How do you maintain the momentum and engagement with funders, with people weeks, months, or even years later?
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult point we don't talk enough about. Momentum matters. And I say various words and then matters afterward. But in a space where you've got to raise millions of dollars, our budget of bringing 1,000 families home, that's our target with the coalition we put together. As soon as we hit it, we'll add another 1,000, right? Because there's so many people devastated. And as we look at bringing 1,000 families home, we ran a sources and use budget that shows it will take about $769 million. I've been telling people I need $1 billion since I can remember. So I'm short. I have more work to do. The momentum piece matters. So we've got to stay in the press. We teamed up with the NeighborWorks America marketing and communications team very early on. A number of the team has been very helpful. We're talking again now about a scam prevention, consumer beware type campaign. There are a bunch of predators that have shown up at the 9th month. They know people are struggling. It's just wrong. They're takers. That kind of media piece, staying in the press, staying on social media so that people follow us and can see what's needed. We also created a rebuilding and recovery workshop series that we've been doing every month with our coalition, where we're providing technical assistance at no charge, no matter where the family is in the recovery process, right? They can sit one-to-one with those technicians, and they may need to see 3 or 4 different people. How do you pick a general contractor, right? How do you pick an architect? This is not a beauty contest. You got to be able to get along with people. You want safe and equitable contracts that are done. As they plug into our system, we still talk about full cycle lending system out here. Some people don't want to borrow, and I talk about one of the seniors who's aged 90 years old, my beloved Roosevelt, who doesn't want to borrow at 90. And he's right. He was free and clear when the fires happened. He wants to come back free and clear. So as we walk alongside those families, telling their stories, keeping things real matters to people. So I think we've come a long way over the last 15 or 20 years since foreclosures. And digital media, I'm no expert at it, but I love to have young people around me who tell us what to do and how to stay relevant. We've done large events, small events, and one-to-one. And that's remained critical. We're talking to our funders all the time. We're holding lender collaboratives, insurance-related collaborations, United Policyholders, trying to get to know groups that have formed since foreclosures, for example, and see how they're doing, what they're doing with public advocates, right? Our HUD-approved counselors. I could just go on. There are so many relevant pieces to make up a full pie, and our job is to help demystify it for people, keep it simple, help them see options, and then they get to choose what they want to do for their life ahead.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is you're keeping up telling the story, applying the pressure, and illustrating for the community and for funders what's possible, but not being shy about articulating the real need.
Yeah, no
like
shame.
this is the
loud. Right. We have to be pretty clear. And it gets hard too after disasters because a lot of people want to help. And so they jump in, and sometimes it's not always the best toolkit. And this is a single family rebuild this time. There is no group better positioned than an NHS, pick a city, to respond. And our network affiliates back to the family. I couldn't survive if there weren't the 8 or 10, 12 in SoCal in my ear telling me things to consider. We're partnering with some on fire resilient rebuilds, right? We buy properties from each other all the time, use each other's products. This is the time to replicate that and scale it even more. Our teams are leading. It's not just NHS of LA. We have a great group of affiliates here in SoCal. I went as far as to hustle our Central and Northern California affiliates, Marietta, just because I have no shame in begging to help us. And many of them are helping, whether it's counseling, affordable lending with the CDFI space. And as redevelopers, we've got some phenomenal multifamily developers in our network. I don't need to try to do it all. And I can ask them for help. Many of them build statewide anyway. So it's how do we get them engaged? And as this money starts to come down, they're in front of it. And they have the expertise, the know-how, the can-do, the balance sheets. Mine is focused on single family, so it's not necessarily strong enough for some of the multifamily rebuild that's coming. And our teammates will be right there.
You know, one of the things that we talk a lot about within the network and on this podcast is about the power of place, and that real recovery happens when local people are informing and leading the work. How do the partnerships that the NHS of LA County have brought together sustain that power after a crisis?
Interesting. I think sustainability is core to everything we do. If you can't build for the long run, what are you doing? Right? I don't tell people how to live. I want them to listen, learn, and educate themselves so they decide their future steps. We have a renters society in America, and that's okay. Raising young women now, I see that. They may not want to own today. They're young. My mother-in-law bought her first home at age 72. She was one of the best homeowners ever. Gave her HOA a run for their money on just about everything she could come up with. But I think that young or old, what we really see is that the partnerships, the collaboration is what's the most sustainable thing. So whether it's community building and engagement, resident leadership development, working with families to advocate for their neighborhoods, as we look at this disaster rebuild, there are thousands of residents who form their own blocks, their own captain, their own safe networks so that they can rebuild. They want to be back, but they know their neighbors. They trust their neighbors. So I think that the way we're staying together is really saying we're better together. I think philanthropy not always being the front group in our space. Now philanthropy is teamed up for a more resilient and sustainable long-term build. And their program-related investments, for example, 10 years might be the maximum they do. So how do we churn that money and see it reinvested multiple times as a leverage in the community? How do we use it to buy down rates that we may need to borrow to make more deals happen? And I think getting everybody talking has really been a key factoid here. It's back to the old model I started with: residents, business, and government all sharing together. And that makes things much more whole. I also would say there are groups that we've never dealt with before that have joined in. And we're finding that they bring great expertise. There's groups that have lived through multiple fires. And so they come with this really serious encyclopedia of knowledge, right, that helps us adapt ourselves and chisel the work so that we're sounder and we're better. And so I'm looking forward to that. That's what gives us hope.
You've mentioned the need to work through a variety of partners: philanthropy, community groups, city agencies, financial institutions. Let's drill down on that and describe to us what effective coordination looks like. What would you like to see improved from those partners, particularly policymakers and philanthropy, to make recovery smoother and more effective?
No, that's a deep question. I'd really say that the effective things right now are the systems we have. And it took about 3 to 4 months to encourage new entrants to our space, that our systems work. And when we talk about a full cycle lending model, we apply that to every disaster, every type of engagement. We always have. It's this notion of partnership building that we hope then leads to financial education and counseling, affordable lending, and project management services. In our case, we have mission-driven real estate along with construction project management that we offer to people. And then that goes right back into this same circle that as we then redevelop communities, we've engaged all these partners. So I think this notion of what could be improved would be we have to speed up now. And it's taken 9 months. There's been initial money. Now we need interim support for all those families we mentioned before that are stuck. And then the long-term rebuild has to kick in at the same time. And so we haven't pulled enough permits. The process is not streamlined well enough. Our government local government and county government ran out of money in many cases to be able to sponsor larger chunks of the rebuild. There were 10 other things on their plate. And when disaster strikes, there might be immediate resource, there might not. Our state was short. And the programming they've put forward is moving things around on the board. It's not new money, right? There's been no bond issues, no tax increment. That's a problem. And so I think that as we push ahead, we need those resources all dumping in. We need the conventional mainstream. Why do we have to have 2 loans for families? Why can't we do construction to perm lending? For those who are too nervous about that, fine, jump into the construction space. Let's get these loans made. Let's not charge extra. You've got vacant land now. So let's figure out our building typology, right? And get going. And stick built, prefab, modular, whatever it is a family can afford and do. I think we've got to put all of it to work, or we're going to be 50 years getting back on a 20-year comeback.
All right, Lori, let's wrap up with a quick lightning round, if you'll indulge me. So I just want you to say the first thing that comes to mind as I ask these series of questions. The one thing that everyone should do this month to prepare for an unexpected emergency.
Put your key documents in a space you can quickly grab and go.
What defines resilience for you?
That's a hard one.
Well rested.
I know. That's the one word thing that's making it hard. Prepared.
One lesson from Los Angeles that could apply everywhere.
Don't focus on the money grab, focus on the sustainability.
Finish this sentence for me. True recovery begins when?
When you start on the road to home ownership. Think recovery, think resilience. It's all tied together.
Lori, thank you again for your leadership, all you do and your team at NHS of LA County to help communities not only recover, but thrive.
Thank you so much, Marietta. We're glad to be here. Glad we were able to make it through the tough wildfire experience to be here today to help families get back home.
We're so fortunate that you are. Remember that resilience doesn't start after the storm. It begins long before through preparation, partnership, and persistence. You can learn more about NeighborWorks America's disaster recovery work at neighborworks.org/resilience and explore how organizations like the NHS of LA County are helping rebuild stronger, safer communities. You can also visit their website, nhslacounty.org. To find a NeighborWorks organization near you, visit our website at neighborworks.org. I am Marietta Rodriguez, and thank you for joining us for The Community Effect, where we share stories of hope, transformation, and the power of place.
This is The Community Effect, brought to you by NeighborWorks America.